Hello, I'm David Hunt. My very special guest today is somebody that I've known for a long time because he's been collecting a particular artist, a legend of screen and stage. I'm talking about Wayne Griffin. Hello, Wayne.
Hello, David. How are you?
Good, thank you. Now, Wayne is a huge collector of stuff of Elizabeth Taylor. And he's just released this book, this amazing book, which is a catalogue of all the stuff you have on Elizabeth Taylor. It's like, look how thick this book is, and everything in it is what you've collected.
Yes, yeah, everything, yep. So hopefully the book will stop me collecting, and then I won't have to do another book with more stuff.
With more stuff. When did it start? Where did this obsession with Elizabeth Taylor start?
Oh, God, back in about 1986, somewhere there.
Right.
You know, yeah, just collecting magazines and watching her on some of the movies. And
so, as a little kid growing up, were you infatuated by her in National Velvet?
No, well, I didn't know who she was.
Oh,
no, it wasn't until my teen years when I started hearing stories with Mum and Dad would go to some of her movies when they were dating that I found out who this woman was. So they would say, "Oh, well, if you like her, watch this movie, watch that movie," and I got sucked in.
The fact is that she's almost like the reality stars on TV, and I don't want to mention their names, one family in particular, because of all the marriages she had, and just with Richard Burton alone. How many times did they marry?
Oh, they married twice.
They married twice.
Yeah.
And all the arguments, those famous arguments you used to hear. But how many other marriages were there?
Well, there was 8 altogether.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So they say, though, she only married the people she loved. So realistically, she only had 8 partners, I guess, in reality,
Right.
if that's how if that's how you wanted to look at it.
Yeah. And of course, she was really famous with her fundraising for AIDS when it was the epidemic was at its height.
Yep.
And like legendary. Do you know how much she raised in those days?
Well, look, I think to date she's raised more than $600 million.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa! That's absolutely huge.
Which is
isn't it?
amazing.
Yeah. Now, with your collection, what was the first thing that you actually purchased of hers?
First thing I purchased, goodness me, I think it was a pair of elbow-length Lycra gloves.
Right.
Worn by her in Butterfield 8.
Yep.
And also used to sign her contract for Cleopatra.
Right. Oh, wow.
So
how did you find out about it? Because it would have been back before YouTube and all the technology now.
Just scanning magazines and scanning, sometimes just getting information coming to me more than me searching, people finding me and knowing that I collect items.
Right.
Maybe thinking that I would like to add that to my collection.
So over the years, there are dresses. They're not just like a pair of gloves or a handbag. There's dresses. How many dresses do you have?
20 to 30.
So they wouldn't have come cheap.
Oh no, they've they've had a price attached.
And as a matter of fact, you told me once when I interviewed you on radio is that the amount of money you spent on this collection would have bought you a house.
Yeah, I did say that. I could have bought me a small house.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. And there's this one yellow dress in particular, which she wore in Cleopatra. You own that.
Yeah,
that's
a
real piece of history, isn't it?
Well, it is really, and to know that it was set back in those days, back in the 1960s, and all that stuff that would have been going on around that particular costume when they're filming that movie would have been amazing.
Even to the extent where, like how you have a label in a dress, the label is actually her name. Wow.
Most of the items do have her name. There are the costumes that are is the costume number and the scene number, and her name is embroidered on the inside.
There's a handbag that you've got, a small silver handbag, and in it is this beautiful handkerchief with embroidered Elizabeth across it. You're like, how did you come across that?
You know what, David, I think I've been pretty lucky with some of the finds that I've had, because I've got hair curlers as well, I've got lipstick, I've got...
So you've got DNA, if you've got lipstick.
I've got DNA, you could say that.
You could make another Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, that's an idea I haven't thought about.
In another 10 years, we could probably do that.
Yeah.
There must be an obsession with you over, not so much now, because you've come to the stage where you've done this catalogue book. But the wonderful thing about in this book is that a lot of the dresses and the handbags and all that, you've found a photo, like in a newspaper or a magazine, and you've linked it with that piece of clothing that you've got.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's part of that whole collecting process. That's the challenge, to find and go, okay, well they've sold it as belonging to Elizabeth Taylor, worn by Elizabeth Taylor, but I want to see her wearing it, or I want to see her using it. Up until probably a month before the book was finished, I was still finding images of, for example, a director's chair. I wanted to see her using it, and all of a sudden I managed to come across an image of her sitting in the director's chair.
So, like this obsession, as I mentioned earlier, like what does people like your parents think and close friends? Do they just shake their head and go, what?
Well, my mother thinks I probably roam around the house in Elizabeth Taylor clothes, which...
Well, she was quite tiny,
she's very small, 5'2", so very small waist. There's no chance I would fit into any of those things. Because I've been doing it for so long, I don't see the coolness of it as much as... Other people are still saying, oh, how cool, how cool, how cool. And I guess it's sort of a pretty cool thing to have.
A couple of years ago, in the Midsummer Festival, you actually had a small display of some of the items.
Yeah.
What was that like, letting the general public see into your world of Elizabeth Taylor?
Well, that was quite amazing, and that's the whole purpose of, I guess, now at the end of the collecting stage, is to be able to share that with everybody. We had busloads of people coming from Frankston, all over, to come and have a look at Elizabeth Taylor items. So we did get a good lot of people coming through there, and it was nice to share that with everybody.
In a way, this book is then doing a similar thing, isn't it? And the fact that it's a worldwide release, this book.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so it is. It's actually sharing. I've even had a couple of comments from fans saying, you know, totally amazing that you are willing to share your collection, because the collectors are funny about things they collect. They don't like to sort of let people know too much about what they have or whatever. They're a bit weird sometimes.
And even to the extent over the years when she was alive, that you got the odd letter from her.
Yeah, quite often. Yeah, I've got a collection of letters and birthday cards and Christmas cards and stuff like that. So I haven't met her as such, but in collecting all the items I have, I meet her every time I handle something that belongs to her.
How lovely of her to actually to go out of her way, and I know it was that era and she would have had the time on her hands as well, to sit down and write to somebody that she knew was a fan. She might have thought you were a bit of a freak as well, and you know, like to be nice.
I'm sure there was a bit of that going on. Well, yeah, no, but I used to do really crazy things and write to her with different coloured paper, or do something unique that was not a standard fan mail letter, so to try and make it stand out a bit. But yeah, I mean, that's the old Hollywood. People do take time to respond to fans and you know what I mean, and they appreciate their fans. I think today's a bit different.
Of course it would be. Do you know other collectors like you?
Yeah, there's a few overseas that I know. There's a couple in Australia that I know.
Are?
Yeah.
Would you have the biggest collection in Australia?
Well, they say to me, "Oh, look at my collection; it's huge." And I mean, I've seen collections that have 3 items in them, and they're not huge.
3 items. Yeah.
So yeah, it has been recorded as one of the largest collections in the world.
In the world, wow. Putting this book together, how many pieces, did you count it? Because you would have had to have, I suppose.
Well, I sort of lost track because people were asking me that question, how many have you got, how many have you got? And I mean, I estimate probably 10,000, but that's including, you know, movies, that's including scrapbooks and all magazines and all types of things. But the personal part of the collection, you're looking at probably 120 specific items that sit sitting there.
Right. Okay. Even to the extent where you had this ashtray, because back then, you know, everyone smoked. I didn't, thank God. And it's a beautiful silver ashtray, and her name's engraved across the middle of it.
Yeah. That was when she was about 40. Her and Richard Burton shared a house in Mexico, in Casa Kimberley it was called, with a bridge, and if he was naughty, he got sent across the bridge. But and it's engraved with her. She's obviously written her name and said, okay, I want an ashtray of my own. Yeah. So he's gone off and had an ashtray made by this silversmith who creates other stuff. I think he made a belt for Michael Jackson at some stage.
Right. Well, she was good friends with Michael Jackson too, wasn't she?
Yeah.
They were great friends. They would often be seen at movie openings and
gala
stuff
events
together.
and things, yeah.
Is there one, and I know you've got jewellery as well, and she was famous for her jewellery, and even to the extent that the ring that Richard Burton, that huge ring, you've actually got a copy of that.
Yeah.
But some of the jewellery you've got is pretty extensive, and that would you know, were they copies that you've got?
No, well, obviously the ring is a copy, because that's like an $8 million ring, and I don't have that much money, obviously. Some of them are no, they are actually hers. Like I think there's a green emerald brooch that was bought by Mike Todd when they visited Australia in 1958. They came to Melbourne. It's Austrian crystal, but it was made in Australia, so that was a gift to her then. There's a few other things that she'd worn on stage that were gifted to people. Obviously, when she first became famous, she didn't have a lot of money to buy really fancy, over-the-top jewellery, so she used to go to places like Kramer of New York, who used to make rhinestone jewellery for celebrities to wear, which is really almost like the real thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
What one thing in the collection that you think is your prized possession? Is there one?
Oh, it's always a difficult question, that one.
That's like, which baby is your favourite?
Well, I mean, it depends on what mood I wake up on, I suppose, on a particular day. I mean, you know, I've got an ice bucket, a crystal ice bucket, that's pretty special, because it's like, I think for me, whatever the favourite piece is, it's got to have an association with what's been going on around it. So if you look at something that's used for entertaining, for example, like an ice bucket, then you just got to go, man, you know, how many stories could this ice bucket tell?
Have you ever used that ice bucket?
I actually have.
Yeah? You're not frightened that you're going to wreck it or anything? No.
Well, not really.
Well,
you can't really. It's an ice bucket.
Yeah. But what about some of the dresses? Because, you know, like that one from Cleopatra, that when you bought it, when I showed it to me, it was just rolled up, you know, and then you unfolded it, and there's this amazing yellow dress. You don't treat them with a lot of respect,
I'm not a curator by trade, you know, David. But no, they are kept in mothballs. They are kept in zipper bags and mothballs and stuff like that. I do steam them on occasion if I'm presenting them to certain events, but ultimately at the end of the day they're going to get crinkled up again. So
yeah. So what would you like to do with this collection at the end of the day? You know, like say, you know, like obviously you're not even thinking about wanting to give it away, or, you know, like start selling it off. Is there something, you know, like say 20 or 30 years time, or is there somebody you want to leave it to, an organisation, or have you thought about that?
No, I haven't even started to think about that.
Because you can't bear the thought of giving it up?
Oh, I actually have had a few items go from the collection over the last few years. People have made offers to purchase particular items, so I have let some items go. I mean, ultimately, I guess with the book, as a catalogue of all the items, it would be nice to actually sell them all to one person and the book to one person, or it would be nice to exhibit everything and have the book as a token of
what the collection was. Wow. That's is there still the hardcore collectors out there for Elizabeth Taylor?
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah, there are. Yes,
including yourself.
Yeah.
Would you buy anything more?
I know there's a few things coming up.
Oh, look at the look on your face.
So yeah, there's a few things I know collectors have told me they're going to let go. Yeah. Because collectors don't tend to let go of a lot of her stuff once they have it. Yeah. It seems to sort of disappear, so to speak, but obviously they keep it. Yeah. But there's a few things coming up. I think a couple of gowns and costumes from Elephant Walk and things like that. So I don't know. We'll see.
Right, we'll see. Wayne Griffin, thank you so much for chatting to us today. What's the book called?
It's called Dame Elizabeth Taylor Shades of Violet, a story told in memorabilia. So it's quite unique. It's not a biography as such. It still tells her life, but we use the memorabilia to also expand on that. So it's
awesome.
a great read.
And thank you for sharing it in this book.
Thank you, David.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. I'm David Hunt. We'll see you soon.